Welcome to Tradecast, everyone, being beamed to the world from the offices of Belia Trading in Lima, Peru. My name is Manolo Delgado. I'm Belia Trading's marketing director, but my real name is Jose Manuel. Manolo is just my nickname. If you want to know any more about me, please go to LinkedIn, but as you know, this is not important. The important thing is our guests. But first, for you guys that are joining us for the first time, what is Tradecast? Tradecast is a series of interviews with top international executives in all areas related to international trade and business. We will address issues such as, and I'll try to say them quickly because I know attention is a very expensive commodity these days. Product development, global sourcing, manufacturing, logistics, quality control, free trade zones, international trade law, shipping, free trade agreements, WTO negotiations, entrepreneurship, and many, many more. We have confirmed guests from all over the world. I'll mention some from east to west. Japan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, India, Turkey, Germany, Switzerland, Spain, Denmark, Brazil, USA, Barbados, Bolivia, Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, where I am originally from. If this is the first time you join us, as I said, let me remind you the structure of the Tradecast. First, we will talk about the person, our guest. Then we will talk about the company that he or she works for. Then we will talk about the present and the future of the subject that we will discuss. Of course, the present and the future can get a bit mixed, but well, that's the reality of our business. Let me just also remind you that at the end, we will have this very famous questionnaire by French journalist Bernard Pivot called Apostrophe à bouillon de couture. That's my French, I'm sorry. And you will really want to see this at the end. So please join us until the end of the Tradecast that should last 40-45 minutes. Finally, a disclaimer, all our guests will be here giving their opinion in a personal basis, okay? They are not speaking for their companies. So cut them some slack. Well, okay, enough of me. Let's introduce our guest today, Miguel de Orbegoso. He's Vice President, North and Central American Region at Agunza, and he's joining us now from Miami. Miguel, hello, how are you? Thank you for being at Tradecast.
Thank you very much, Manolo, and I'm happy to join you and all the audience eventually of Tradecast. Very happy to be here.
Super. One thing that we do, Miguel, with the Spanish-speaking people is that we get a chance to speak a bit in Spanish, and we always thought that the best part to do it in Spanish would be the first one because it's talking about you and your life and your professional career. So let's switch a castellano. Cuéntanos, Miguel, un poco. Yo conozco tu historia, pero buena parte de la audiencia que nos ve son personas que están estudiando o haciendo maestrías y que les interesa entrar eventualmente a los negocios internacionales. Y yo precisamente te he invitado porque creo que eres un muy buen ejemplo de una vida que ha sido exitosa profesionalmente e interesante en cómo se ha dado. Entonces, empecemos por lo más básico. Cuéntanos un poco dónde naciste, qué estudiaste y en qué países has ido viviendo en el transcurso de tu carrera.
Perfecto, Manolo, gracias. Bueno, bien has dicho que nos conocemos mucho, así que te lo repito, y para toda la audiencia, mira, yo soy peruano, nací en el Perú hace 43 años, y viví en el Perú hasta los 10, y en ese momento mi familia decide irse a vivir a Chile por temas de trabajo de mi padre, y nos movimos todos, yo tenía 10 años, o sea que nos movimos todos en Chile. Entonces yo fui criado en Chile, digamos, hice el colegio, la universidad, siempre he tenido esa dicotomía, entonces, ¿no es cierto? Tengo ambas nacionalidades hoy día, mucha gente me dice, oye, pero Perú, Chile. Bueno, claro, Perú, Chile, países hermanos, y estudié en Chile, estudié ingeniería, estudié ingeniería en la Universidad Católica de Chile, ingeniería industrial, algo no necesariamente, aun cuando algo relacionado, no necesariamente relacionado a comercio exterior, ni nada por el estilo, ingeniería industrial en Chile, en la Universidad Católica de Chile, y recuerdo haber estado en la etapa en que iba a entrevistas de trabajo y me tocó ir a entrevistas en otras compañías relacionadas a la producción y en compañías relacionadas a la manufactura, y una de esas entrevistas fue en una empresa marítima, de transporte marítimo, que era la Compañía Chilena de Navegación Interoceánica, CNI, que es parte del mismo grupo donde estoy hoy día, después de algunos cambios, ya te cuento, pero Y lo que me llamó la atención de CCNI en ese entonces, fue hace 15 años, me parece, lo que me llamó la atención fue las posibilidades que daba el trabajar en una compañía marítima y en comercio internacional, de relacionarse con otros países, otras nacionalidades, comercio, globalización. La globalización ya había empezado hace 15 años, por ejemplo, China ya se había abierto, pero todavía estaba empezando, las primeras personas empezaban a ir a vivir fuera, y todo eso me llamaba mucho la atención, tal vez por ser siempre un extranjero, viviendo fuera de mi país, me llamaba la atención de conocer a gente de otras nacionalidades, de trabajar con otros países. Entonces empecé en la naviera, y después me quedé en la naviera por los siguientes 12 años, o lo que sea. Trabajé en Interoceánica, tuve la posibilidad de ir a Hong Kong, a vivir en Hong Kong, viví 5 años en Hong Kong, que fue donde nos conocimos en algún momento, año
Cuéntanos, Miguel, perdón que te
2005.
interrumpa. Cuéntanos un poquito, porque creo que es muy interesante cómo se da esa primera salida del país donde uno empezó. Internamente, tú aplicaste, alguien te ofreció Hong Kong, en el mundo de la logística, ¿cómo se tienden a dar estas cosas o cómo se dio en tu caso al
Sí,
menos?
mira, uno forja, el que, ¿cómo dice? El que no llora no mama, ¿no? Uno forja, uno forja hacia dónde uno quiere apuntar. Entonces, por ejemplo, en mi caso, yo siempre trabajé en temas marítimos relacionados con Asia, y siempre me involucré mucho con la cultura asiática, y siempre estuve en mucho contacto con nuestras oficinas en Asia, con nuestros agentes en Asia, con los proveedores, etcétera. Entonces, sí, hay un tema personal. Me acuerdo en esa época haber conversado con gente que decía, uy, sí, salí, pero Asia, qué lejos. Entonces, hay un tema que es un bicho personal que uno tiene de ir a descubrir el mundo, ¿no es cierto? El Colón moderno, el Colón un poquito más cómodo, tal vez, que no me embarqué en la Niña, ni en la Pinta, ni en la Santa María, pero uno tiene que tener esa visión de querer salir de su país. Y después uno se la tiene que buscar internamente, ¿no? Yo estaba en un área comercial, y tenía muchas ganas, y demostré que quería salir. Entonces se me dio la posibilidad de efectivamente ir a manejar la oficina comercialmente, ir a manejar la oficina de Hong Kong para Interoceánica, ¿no? El año 2005, me parece que puede haber sido, ¿no? O 2007 tal vez. Y ahí estuve haciendo todo lo relacionado comercialmente a transporte marítimo, ¿no? Desde pricing hasta trade management, hasta ventas, relaciones comerciales. Interoceánica, CCNI en ese momento era una naviera top 30 del mundo, no de las más grandes, pero sí se necesitaba mucho esfuerzo comercial en nuestros negocios con Latinoamérica, principalmente de importación a Latinoamérica, ¿no? Exportaciones de Asia a Latinoamérica. Ahí estuve 5 años donde bueno, me enamoré de Hong Kong, qué sé yo, y después regreso a Chile, eventualmente aún con CCNI, para trabajar en ventas, en Chile, en ventas para Chile y Perú, ventas de exportación, todavía muy relacionado a la parte comercial, pero más el enfoque de exportación de Latinoamérica al mundo. Y ahí empieza algo que probablemente vamos a conversar después, que es el tema de la consolidación de industrias, ¿no? Entonces ahí me tocó saltar de CCNI a otra compañía naviera que se llama Hamburg Süd, alemana, que compró a CCNI. Después a la alemana, que era la número 10 del mundo, la compró la número 1 del mundo, que es Maersk, o sea que salté a Maersk, todavía en el mundo marítimo. Y hace solamente 3 meses he vuelto al grupo, ¿no? Empecé con CCNI, me fui a otras empresas de mayor tamaño navieras, y he vuelto ahora a la posición en donde estoy hoy día, en Agunza,
Antes que
que
nos
es una
cuentes,
empresa
Miguel,
relacionada.
sobre Agunza y lo que estás haciendo, para que creo que una de las partes más interesantes es cómo, claro, tú supiste mover bien dentro de dos, no sé, compras o fusiones, o no sé cuál es el término exacto de que pasó entre Hapag-Lloyd, no, perdón, Hamburg Süd,
Hamburg Süd.
y luego Maersk y CCNI. Pero dentro de estas movidas, tú cuéntanos un poquito, tú terminaste viviendo 4 o 5 años en Copenhague, en la matriz
Claro, claro,
de
claro.
Maersk, que eso es una
Claro,
experiencia alucinante. No sé, ¿no puedes
claro,
contar un poquito qué veías ahí?
efectivamente estuve los 5 años en Hong Kong, después regresé a Chile por 3 años, después volví a Hong Kong con Hamburg Süd por otros 3 años, y ahí salté a Copenhague, que es donde estaba la casa matriz, donde está la casa matriz hoy en día de Maersk, esa compañía que es la número 1 o 2 del mundo en transporte marítimo y logística hoy en día. Cosas que ha pasado en mi carrera, o sea, efectivamente yo siempre he estado del lado comercial, y siempre he hecho de mi carrera convertirme en un asset valioso para la compañía, tanto por el conocimiento comercial que traigo, por el conocimiento de de trade management o de tráfico que traigo. Y sí, mi carrera ha tenido distintos matices, ¿no? Antes, hace un tiempo, muy comercial y muy local. Después, lo que tú mencionas ahora, estuve 4 años en Copenhague en un trabajo bastante corporativo, de casa central, de planificación estratégica, de lineamientos, no necesariamente al hoy, de cuál es que eso me pasaba antes, cuál es la tarifa hoy para mover carga de Shanghai a Callao. No, esto acá era más de cuál va a ser la tarifa en el largo plazo y por qué, y cuál es la elasticidad de la oferta y la demanda, y qué medidas de sostenibilidad tenemos que tener para que nuestro negocio dure. O sea, una cosa mucho más estratégica, ¿no? Entonces, que a ratos hace muy interesante el salirse un poquito del día a día y entrar en una visión un poquito más macro del negocio, de qué es lo que estamos haciendo y por qué, y no solamente en la ejecución, ¿no? Y obviamente que el approach de negocios, de cómo hacer negocios en Europa era totalmente distinto a cómo hacerlos en Chile o Perú, ¿sí? Y totalmente distinto a cómo hacerlo también en Asia, ¿no?
Eso es interesante, Miguel. Te quería preguntar, a ver, tú que has estado viviendo y has trabajado en estas culturas distintas, y ahora vamos a hablar de dónde estás ahora, Norteamérica, Centroamérica, etcétera, pero ¿qué característica crees tú que es importante para un futuro profesional que quiere entrar a este mundo para poder un poco ser exitoso en términos de eso, ¿no? De moverse tanto, tal vez estoy respondiéndome a mí mismo, pero ser flexible para poder lidiar con un proveedor asiático en Ningbo y de pronto pues con un cliente en Hamburgo? Bueno, es vivir el mundo, ¿no? ¿Qué consejo le podrías dar un poco a la gente que tiene que de pronto verse lidiando con tantas diferencias culturales y que tiene pues sutileza, ¿no?
Sí, acá yo creo que el mensaje, o sea, no es para todos, obviamente, ¿no? Y uno no es especial por poder hacerlo, pero no es para todos, en el sentido de que sí, uno tiene que estar muy abierto a poder trabajar con distintas culturas y entender las consideraciones culturales de cada uno de ellas, ¿no es cierto? Negociar con una persona de China no es lo mismo que negociar con una persona de India, y no es lo mismo que negociar con una persona de Latinoamérica, porque hay drivers distintos de lo que están buscando, hay razones no solamente de negocios, sino que de repente más filosóficas o emocionales acerca de lo que están buscando. Entonces, uno tiene que definitivamente comprender, o cuando no esté de acuerdo, comprender que esas diferencias existen y ver cómo uno navega a través de ellas, ¿no? Eso es uno. Dos, tiene que estar la disponibilidad, no la disponibilidad, la disposición es la palabra. La disposición a trabajar mucho, estar lejos de casa, trabajar en deshorarios. Uno de los temas de global trade es que el global trade es global, ergo no se detiene, ¿no? Entonces uno está básicamente, aún cuando uno diseña en su cabeza que yo trabajo de 8 a 8 o de 9 a 5 o lo que sea, uno en realidad trabaja 24 horas al día porque siempre hay algo que está pasando para el negocio de uno cuando uno habla de global trade. Algo que atraviesa a todas las culturas probablemente a nivel de liderazgo personal es que uno tiene que, y me ha tocado en todas las posiciones donde he trabajado, ¿no? Así como explicaba que en algún momento las funciones son más del día a día, llámalo meter más los pies y las manos en el barro, mientras que otra función es un poquito más senior, más de mirar el tema macro y estratégico. Lo que es transversal para todas es que uno tiene que tratar de involucrarse con los compañeros de trabajo, los reportes directos o los reportes indirectos, de la manera más abierta posible, de la manera más honesta posible, mostrar que uno está trabajando a la par con ellos y también tratar de transmitir cuáles son las ambiciones que uno tiene como empleado o como jefe acerca de los targets que queremos lograr, ¿no?
Okay. Now let's do a quick switch, Miguel, since we're going to section
2. Okay.
Now, okay, so you said you have all this international experience. You did the last years in Copenhagen with Maersk, and only a couple of months ago, another change, you go back to the group where you started, you go to the US. So tell us first, I guess, a bit about Agunza. So our audience gets more familiar with what Agunza is, what their services are, maybe what geographies they work in, etc. And then let's talk a bit about what you're actually doing now.
Yeah, cool. So Agunza is a service company, no? So Agunza, before I go into the pure description, Agunza, as I mentioned before, is part of the same group. So I started in CCNI shipping line. And when I was there, the group, the holding company had different companies. One of them was CCNI. The other company was Agunza, sister company. No? While CCNI was doing shipping, maritime transport, Agunza was and is doing logistics and services. So after all these turns and traveling around the world, one of my previous colleagues just called me to see if I was interested in coming back to Agunza, so returning to the group indeed, to take a lead on our North America and Central America operations. That for all matter of purposes, this means the US, Mexico, and Central America and the Caribbean. And Agunza, what we do here and in Latin America, what we do here is logistics and services. No? Logistics ranging from international logistics, transport, trucking, warehouse and distribution, 3PL, 4PL, freight forwarding, to services and agency representations, meaning we represent different shipping lines and airlines in Latin America. For example, when these companies don't have an office in Latin America, we also take the representation for these companies. No? So Agunza is a very well that Agunza is a let's say 60-year-old company that was created on the back of CCNI shipping line. Nevertheless, it has now expanded the range of services from, as mentioned, logistics, services, port operations. We own terminals, we own airports. And what we are trying to achieve in Northern and Central America is just expand the reach of our services.
Okay. So basically everything. Would it be fair to say that in the world of logistics, you do everything?
Pretty much everything. I don't have, so pretty much everything in the world of logistics, I don't have. This was not prepared. So this is my business card, no? And I don't know if you read it correctly, no? So the vision is Agunza, we make it possible. Do you read it? Yeah, I don't know if you read it straight or it's backwards, but so we make it possible, which is basically in the world of logistics, we try to offer custom-made solutions to our customers. And the important thing is the following. So yes, we are a global company. We have offices all across Latin America and here in the US, and we have offices in Spain, and we have offices in Hong Kong and in China. So it is a global company. Nevertheless, we try to provide solutions that are very local, understanding that logistics may be different to shipping, because shipping becomes a little bit more global. No, it's very common, but logistics need to have a very local eye to it, because it talks about customs brokerage or local tracking legislations or warehousing and distribution. So you need to follow a lot of the local regulations, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, and in terms of percentage of your business, okay, you're a global company, but I'm just curious, your main markets, if I can put it that way, would be where you are now is a Latin American, things that come in and out of Latin America?
Yes, so Agunza is a Chilean company. So the ownership of the company is Chilean capitals. Let's say it was founded in Chile. Agunza specifically, like 60 years ago, was mentioned. So our biggest exposure is in Chile, is in Peru, is in Ecuador and Colombia. And we have, let's say, smaller, still offering all the array of services, offices in the US and Mexico and Central America. Where we're trying to do is some way, somehow replicate all the array of services we have in South America into this region. No? But yeah, it is mainly Latin American. You would say that 100% of our business, if not 95% of the business, is anything logistics related and services related in and out of Latin America.
Okay, and well, in your new position, I'm curious. Your main goals now is a bit of a mix, I guess, from this is more strategic things that you were doing in Maersk to maybe, as you mentioned, like going into the mud, to put it in that way, but in this region, right? Central America and the US, as you said, the US, Mexico, and I guess one of your biggest challenges is to develop those markets.
Correct, right? So, yes.
For the benefit of our audience, of course, I'm not going to ask you how precisely you do it, but strategically, how is it? How do you see this working in the next years? Are you guys gonna, like, do you go and check macro data to decide, okay, let's focus on Nicaragua versus El Salvador, to just make an example? How does that work? The decision process? I'm curious.
So surely there's different considerations on the way we approach business. So one of them is what you have mentioned, for example, geographical. No, so there's many reasons why, for example, also Agunza as a group wants to invest more in more certain and more stable US like countries, US or Spain countries, compared to some of the more turmoiled Latin American countries. So there's a strategic direction to try to invest more and grow more inorganically our business in the US, for example. There's also geographical decisions such as, for example, there's massive growth expected in countries like Guyana and Suriname because of the potentials they have on oil and gas industry, because of the oiling fields that they have found in these countries, means that these countries that at the moment are facing huge development in the coming 20 years. So one of our drivers is, okay, so how do we establish ourselves there to be probably not number one in the market, but number 10 instead of number 550 when this really explodes. So we're investigating those considerations. And for our usual business, what we do is just follow marketing statistics, and we follow profitability studies in terms of where do we believe the whole array of our services that I mentioned that we offer, which of them provides the better, so on which of them we get the highest return on investment as a company, and on which of them we believe that we provide the customers with the most reliable solution for their needs. No, so just as an example, we are more proficient in some of the services that we offer than others. No, we are very proficient on warehouse and distribution. We are very proficient in trucking. We are very proficient in port operations. So a lot of our biggest investments and efforts goes into how do we manage to expose ourselves more into these kind of businesses in this region.
Okay, let's before we open a bit more into a global and more I want to use the term generic, but a broader conversation. In the geographies that you are seeing now, as you said, the US, Central America, I'm just curious because as we both know, trade is incredibly important and a very important driver for development. You know, for Asia, it's been, of course, the way Asia has developed from the last decades, et cetera, et cetera. Latin America and Central America seems that they don't fully make up their minds, right? Sometimes this really relates to government and public policy. Are we going to embrace? Are we going to become a free trading country? Are we going to develop infrastructure because our growth development model relates to exports or not, etc.? I'm wondering what do you see? You mentioned what sometimes we South Americans forget are part of South America. So if you're watching us from Suriname or Guyana, we embrace you, South American brother. But these countries that are these three small countries on north between Venezuela and Brazil, where else do you see the future or good markets that, because of either a political decision or some discovery, as you said, the oil and gas or something, where do you think it's going to be the places where you would like to grow the most in the next 5 years?
Potential wise, I guess that these places such as Guyana and Suriname and whatever are something to be watched on. No? So we are also taking careful steps. We are not putting all our money and putting it on Guyana and Suriname just for the fun of it. No? So we're taking careful steps and approaching also a lot of government authorities to understand more of what's coming, just to be sure that we are there to offer all the array of services we can offer, no? From, as mentioned before, from warehousing to representation to a lot of things. No? For us, Acunza, it is clear that investing in a country like the US, for example, is very important. It's a country that provides pseudo-clear rules in terms of what you can expect from regulations and taxes and the way the rule of law applies to companies. And there's growth potential. This is a massive country. We are investing a lot in Mexico because of the potential it has and because of the size that we have. We believe that if we were to compare ourselves to how we are present in markets such as Peru and Chile, for example, there's much more that we could be doing and we need to do in Mexico. There's some other countries, Acunza specifically, there's some other countries where we are not expanding too much. No, countries, as we mentioned before, Latin American countries with turmoil governments, and it's not that we are deselecting, because we still have a massive growth in places like Chile and Peru and Argentina and what's not. We're just taking maybe the foot out of the gas and making sure that our attention and investments go somewhere else. in the meantime, until it gets clarified. So this is not this is not necessarily a thing about whether the government is left or right. We just want to have some clarity in terms of what can be sustainable in time in terms of politics and regulations and and potentials for investment.
Sure. Let's take the conversation. We have about maybe 20 more minutes max. So let's try to talk about logistics and trade a bit more in general. It's impossible to not mention, if we want to try to understand the present day, 2022, this might be actually showed in 2023 early, but for the transparency, we are taping this in late November of 2022. And it's impossible to avoid mentioning the pandemic and the crisis of logistics, the enormous tariffs and the pricing, how it's going, I don't know, 20 times at some point, maybe. What's happening now? And before talking about what's happening now, can you try to explain in layman terms, why did this happen? Was it really a crunch of too much demand with not enough supply in terms of purely shipping? I'm talking about. Why did we see the hundreds of ships parked outside Long Beach and Singapore? What happened, basically?
Yeah, I think it was surely a combination. It's a perfect storm. No? It was a combination of many different aspects. No? One surely was the COVID effect, let's call it that way. No, COVID came in, it started hitting in, what was it, 2019 or 20? No, 2020 probably, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2019
early 20.
started in China, but yeah, sure.
Yeah,
2020
so let's say, exactly, so early 20, and I think that when trade started getting affected because of factories closing down and because of people getting scared about how demand would behave, I think that there was a big concern about shipping lines and the world in general, that demand would simply dump for months and months. And I remember receiving in my email reports from Oxford and Harvard and Jupiter University about how demand would decrease massively, and it would only recover in 2054 or something. Exaggeration, no? And in fact, that didn't happen, no? So when all the shipping lines received those kind of reports, they were a little bit more conservative in terms of the way they invested in new ships. That's one. They were a little bit more aggressive in the way they scraped old ships, meaning taking the ships to be terminated, let's say. Shipping lines were also a little bit more proactive in blanking sailings and keeping capacity out of the trade, because the expectation was that demand was not to come for at least a couple of years. No? So in reality, what happened is that the demand decreased. The demand strongly decreased for maybe 2 months, and then it immediately came back. Maybe not at the same levels as what we had pre-COVID, but surely at very high sustainable levels, and to levels that made the capacity that was available and sustainable. No? So point number one, I think that one of the reasons was a wrong interpretation of how supply and demand would behave. Supply in terms of the capacity that was dumped on the trade, and demand in terms of how fast it came back. That is one. Two, there was a massive problem, especially in some countries. Number two, on this same matter of demand, not only there was a wrong interpretation on how fast it would come back, but there was also a wrong interpretation of where this demand, or how on different global trades the different demand would hit. No, you know that COVID started in China, but then it moved to you. So it was very regional. No, so while we had massive problems of COVID on the first wave in Europe, maybe Asia was still okay, and the COVID only hit Asia later. So all of these changes also affected the way shipping lines deployed their ships or did blank sailing programs. So that created a whole mess. Point number three is the whole fact that whatever was from the port to inland, meaning port operations, trucking operations, rail operations, congestion in the terminals, has reached a massive heights, especially in European ports. I don't think this is a massive problem in Latin America, to our Latin American audience, but especially in Asian ports due to COVID, and in the US and Europe ports due to capacity, structural capacity. And all of it, when this cargo started coming back, there was no way to get it out of the terminal. So when you mention, indeed, there was a queue of 50 vessels outside of Long Beach, the main problem was not that demand was high or that the cargo was there or that the ships were there. It was just that the system didn't have enough capacity to discharge the ships and get the cargo out of the terminal. So it was just a big problem. Those, I think, were the main two reasons for what we saw on COVID. And what this creates is, provided there's no space load, then you have the usual supply and demand imbalance, and then the rates go up. No, so indeed the rates increase by. It depends on what you start measuring, but it increased anywhere between 10 to 20 times what the normal rate on certain trades would have been. No, we saw for the first time in history, we saw rates reaching $20,000 for trans-Pacific trades or Europe trades, or even maybe on Latin America trades to a certain extent. A lot of customers, a lot of receiving customers were trying to overstock, being afraid that they would not find space later. So this also created that maybe it might have been that a lot of customers just advanced purchase orders. So they started receiving slightly more volumes than what they should have, just to be sure that they kept high stocks for the Christmas season or others. So it was just a combination of everything.
And how are things moving now to the present? Yes, things have apparently become sort of a new normal, I guess. What are you seeing in the last months? What is your expectation for 2023 in those terms?
Yeah. So it has now decreased, no? And we see it on the volumes, and we see it on the rates. The rates are now back to old pre-COVID stages, no? So whatever rate pre-COVID was $1,000 per box and increased to $20,000 per box, it is now again back to $1,000 per box or whatever it is. No? I am I'm pretty much convinced myself that I think that shipping lines have taken the right approach in terms of how to stabilize the markets in the long run. No? If you see trade and rates and what's not, it follows a very typical cycle of some years the rates are $0 per container, some years the rates are $5,000 per container, and it changes, no? on a yearly basis. I think that due to consolidation of shipping lines, no? 15 years ago there were 50 big shipping lines. Now there's only 10 because there's been a lot of consolidation. So the consolidation of shipping lines, a better understanding from shipping lines in terms of how to try to manage their own expectations on how much cargo they should get on their vessels. The increased costs that shipping lines are seeing right now, the petrol is now, it has increased massively from previous years. So I think or want to believe that shipping lines have kind of learned the lesson in terms of managing their own assets and expectations and to keep a more stable trade moving forward. So even though I think it has decreased a lot right now, I think it is my expectation that it will come back to a new normal that makes a profitable business for shipping lines for sure, for logistics companies, and hopefully still allowing customer to make its business. No?
Okay, and if there's anything that you are more concerned about, I don't know, because the world of logistics is very complex, of course, things can change quickly. I'm just curious, as someone that sees the side of logistics more as a customer, but not, I don't know the beast from the inside. I'm wondering, when you talk to your colleagues, other companies, etc., is there anything that you guys have? What is the topic of conversation, if I may put it? Is it sustainability the driver now within the debates at the boards in these big, huge companies, which are the shipping companies, but maybe logistics in general? Is it the change of the China being less and less the factory of the world in certain categories, the movement from China to Southeast Asia, for example, or the massive changes that India has done to become a more efficient exporter? There are new laws in India that are consolidating the states, and I don't know. What is it that you guys see that in the future is going to be one key element that you already have your eye set on?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that, well, there's 100 probably things, but there's a couple of things that come to mind right now. So one of them is the whole logistics aspect of things. The conversation for the last, maybe not the last 5 years, but the conversation for the 20 years previous to that was always about shipping, because the world was bigger than it is now. I think that the world has become smaller lately with globalization. But in the world, in the past, it used to be, how do I bring my container from Shanghai to Callao? Shipping. I think that the conversation is turning a little bit more into logistics, because we are all starting to understand that it is not only bringing it to Shanghai and to Callao, but it is bringing it from from Taizhou into somewhere into the factory and moving it by truck down a river and then getting it to Shanghai. Logistics in origin, and likewise, the cargo doesn't stay in Callao. I'm using Callao as an example in Peru, but the cargo doesn't stay in Callao. No, the cargo needs to go to a warehouse probably, and it might or might not need storage, warehousing and distribution, or 3PL activities, or I have no idea. No? So there's a full array of things.
Mile, dark stores,
no,
concepts that are kind of new. Okay.
So surely this is where companies like Agunza comes in, and we see also a lot of shipping lines that are starting to integrate these services. My previous companies were also in this kind of journey, of how to change the vision from a logistics a shipping company to a more logistics company. How do we manage to offer the full array of services that customers need? So I think that logistics will play a key role moving forward. That is one. Number two is you mentioned, is sustainability. There is this. We have a problem. So that the world has a problem.
Minor one, but sure.
It's a minor one, and it is clear that transport and logistics contribute to a part of this problem, and we are also called to be part of the solution. Now, this solution is expensive, to say the least, in terms of if you want to be carbon neutral by year 2040, as some companies have said, or 2050, like some others have said, there's massive amounts of investments that need to happen on the company side. And a lot of this needs to be discussed in conjunction with customers in terms of how are we going to finance these kind of things. And there's different customers around the world that have different approaches on things, and probably some of the more forward thinking are already starting to think, and I'm not going to give examples here, but big retailers in Europe are ready to have a very green mindset to things, in terms of saying, I prefer to work, for example, with logistics companies or shipping companies that have some kind of a carbon neutral plan, because me as a company, I also have a carbon neutral plan, and it's just a magic. So people are starting to use this as a strategic advantage on how to get more business. Now, this comes at an expense and an investment by both customers and shipping lines, because this costs money, because you need to run on more expensive fuels, let's say, or more expensive ways on how to carbon neutralize the fuel that you're using. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities, but a lot of challenges ahead in terms of sustainability. In time, you see, there's massive problems in the US now with rails and trucks, and there's lack of truck availability and what's not. And the future is electric trucks. Now, this is a dilemma that a company might have. Buying a normal truck costs me $150,000 US. Buying an electric truck costs me $500,000. So how do I bridge that gap so that my investment really makes sense from a company perspective? How do I get, who's going to pay for that? I can pay it, but I also need customers to see the value on this and want to chip into this solution.
What's interesting that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense from talking to you and other people in the logistics field that this is driven by both sides. You guys that are in charge of logistics are taking actions. I don't know, maybe some companies, maybe Maersk, I don't know if Agunza, but companies even like have divisions now specifically dedicated to this. And also it's coming from the demand side, your customers saying, okay, well, I want to see, to make a decision, I might pay a couple more in X service, but I want to see that you are a company committed in values. Is both worlds in parallel, right?
Absolutely. With all due respect not with all due respect, but so there are some people that have chickens and they put like this free range chicken. So they are probably the cleanest people on earth. Yeah, but our industries are not clean, regrettably. So not only our industries, logistics and shipping, but whoever is producing t-shirts in Bangladesh have their own sustainability issues. Whoever is mining in Latin America has their sustainability issues. Whoever is cattle in the US or Brazil have their own sustainability issues. So everyone wants to chip in. It is expensive. It is complex. It is happening. I think so. It is a very complex solution. So yes, my previous company, Maersk, for example, they had a full department of people. And I'm not talking about, hey, listen, appoint those 3 guys to try to solve. No. It's 55 high level degree people that are in terms of how do we solve this, and their deadline is 2040. No, so it's a freaking long-term plan on how to get solutions on this. No?
But there is a commitment, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
But as you say, it's probably the most complex
yes.
issue that the world has ever faced. But let's stay positive with that, and in that note, let's go into the fun part of the interview. Okay, it's been around 45 minutes. I'd like to close, as I mentioned at the beginning, with the famous questionnaire by Bernard Pivot, which, by the way, Miguel taught me today that I think is related to something that Marcel Proust wrote. So I'm going to have to do research. But anyway, let's go to this one, which I think is a fun and it's a good way to end the conversation.
Miguel, let's make a disclaimer. I prepared for this because it's not that I prepared and I dreamt on it, and I didn't write it down. I wrote it down here, but I prepared for this. Just okay.
I do expect that you didn't you're not gonna just improvise it now, because you would probably make a fool of yourself. So let's go and check what you thought. Okay, Miguel, what is your favorite word?
So my favorite word is cacophony. Cacophony.
Okay.
And it's a word that I like because it sounds very beautiful. Cacophony, at least in my ears, and at the same time it means a horrible dissonant sound. So there's a
Okay. Lovely explanation. Thank you. Okay, and then what is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word is literally. I think that literally is overused in our in our normal uses. Literally, this is what I mean. Literally, I don't like.
Yeah, it is literally overused, I guess. Okay. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
So I wrote on here unsolicited good actions from someone to another. No? So I don't know if the expression is unsolicited good actions. There's probably a better way to phrase it in English. Unsolicited, but it's just a natural people being naturally good,
good-hearted,
spontaneous, good-hearted acts of. Yeah.
Good. And what turns you off?
It turns me off when I see people that stop being amazed at small things. When you lose the ability to get amazed at just a normal everyday life, let's say.
Okay, this is a good one, and feel free to do it in English or in Spanish, or if you have a funny one that you learned in your days in Denmark, whatever. But Miguel, what is your favorite curse word?
I don't say curse words.
So
no, I do. No, yes, I do. So I do. So yeah, okay. So I do. So I think that in English I use a lot fuck in all of its in the array of uses. But in Latin America, I think that mainly in Chile and surely in Peru, I remember using it in Peru before. We have this word huevón, no? Huevón, which is used for is used in different contexts for different uses. It is insulting. It is friendship. It is come on. Yeah? So huevón is clearly the one I use the most.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
So I'm a frustrated musician. So it's music what I like and what I hear. So if it is a noise that I love, is sweet reggae. It's something that always cools me off.
Okay. What sound or noise do you hate?
Traffic jams. So I moved into. So I used to live in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, there were traffic jams, nothing too crazy, but I have lived for 4 years in Denmark, where my mean of transport was a bike in a very empty, small city/town. And I have come into Miami now, where there's massive traffic jams and it's a pain. So there's noise to it.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would have said musician. I think that I'm kind of a frustrated musician. Maybe it's still time to pick it up. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah,
after Agunza, Miami.
you can play a bit of a guitar, but only reggae riffs. Ching. You need to expand your repertoire. Okay. And what profession would you never like to do?
So I thought about this, and there's many, but one of them is crocodile hunter. I would not be the crocodile hunter, the Australian guy. Well, with for obvious reasons.
Okay, but he was killed by a manta ray. So, but okay.
Well, Yeah,
Okay, I get your point. But you've done bungee jumping from the Macau Tower, so let's be clear that you're still some kind of adrenaline junkie in some level. Okay, and to close, Miguel, the philosophical question: if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
So, free pizza and beer to the right.
Man, you did good. Good job, my friend. That's a good one. Okay. So yeah, we come to the end of Tradecast. Thank you so much, Miguel, for your time. I think it's been educational. I want to say inspiring to some, but for sure we've got good information for us that work in this field of international trade and business. So thank you so much. And I'd like to also, of course, thank Belia Trading for creating Tradecast. I wish everybody have a successful day from Latin America. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye. Thanks a lot.